What's up, everybody? Sparrow with a Gun here from Sleepless Nights with another episode on the Space Reverse Engineers series. And we are working with the Super Norvik, I think is how you're supposed to say that. Ah, there it is. Yes. So I actually had quite an interesting situation with this episode. Because it's the first time that I put out a poll on my Space Engineers Inspiration episode as to which one of the Inspiration episode builds you guys wanted to see reverse engineered, and I got 18 responses, 6 in each category. So it was a dead tie among all of them. And then there was a couple things in the comments and stuff I had to kind of sift through to figure out, but ultimately when I compared all three of them, I felt like, since it was so split, even though there was a couple of comments that leaned one way or another, that I think the Norvik had the most detail work that we could actually break down. A lot of the other two ships, although bigger, and had interiors and things like that that we could break down, I don't think they were quite as detailed and nuanced in the actual building method, which is kind of what I typically focus on in the Reverse Engineers series. So that, and we haven't done a small ship in a while, so I figured it wouldn't be a bad one to do. So we're going to work on the Super Norvik. Also, I wanted to ask, or throw it out there at least, let me know if you guys have any other ideas that you might have for future episodes. And what I mean by that is, I've mentioned before doing an episode on like how to do hypergridding, how to do maybe like the rotor tricks and things like that. If you guys would consider that like reverse engineering the mechanics of the game and would like to see more videos on actual, like, not breaking down ships, but trying and experimenting with different building techniques and seeing if we can figure out how to make stuff, let me know. That's something that I'd consider, as this series kind of started from you guys saying, hey, this would be cool. It wasn't really one that I came up with, so I have less investment into how actually every little thing is done. So with that, I'll leave it at that, and just let me know if you guys have some other ideas, because it got brought up in the comments a couple times about maybe doing episodes that focused on unique building methods or testing out different things and stuff like that, rather than just kind of taking things apart. So with that, let's get into the build. So first off, I really like the use of blast door blocks here. Not only is it useful here and there for stuff like this where you're wanting to avoid collisions with rotors and things, it's also very, very decorative when used in this way, because the block is kind of different than the main armor block, so it adds a little bit more contrast, if you will, especially having different colors and things like that. It's like on the side here, I don't think there's really any particular use for it, but it kind of adds a little bit to the siding. Now, it is a blast door block, or blast block? They still call it doors. Okay. I didn't know if they changed it eventually to just blast block or something, but it's still blast doors, I guess. But, you know, it is still blast door block, so in terms of damage reduction, if you were to get hit in those specific trim spots kind of thing, it probably would have a bit more sturdy armor in those places, so there is that. But yeah, I like that style. We can see it up here as well. Now this is kind of interesting, because I don't remember the turret being that size. I thought it had a different base to it. Ah! Okay. So we do have some tomfoolery going on here. I see how this works. Well, no, not really, but actually, let's go ahead and tinker with this a little bit then, shall we? So it looks like this is actually a hypergrid, or what I'm calling a hypergrid. I'm not sure if that's what everyone else in the community calls it or not, but that's what I'm calling it. That's interesting. Okay, so that is the actual base. Now the question here, basically, there's always a question I have when I see stuff like this, and that is it a hypergrid where you would need something like SE Toolbox or something to make it happen? Or is it manipulating collision boxes? I believe this is more of a hypergrid, I'm thinking. This is almost like a Jenga puzzle. I gotta figure out which one I want to break. Okay. I can't figure it. This might be the main turret, actually. Nope, there it is. Okay. Well, maybe. Wow, I'm having a really hard time finding this turret. Oh, there we go. Okay. Wait. No, it's over here, it looks like, then. I cannot get in here. Okay, so I just decided to take the smarter way out and use the spectator camera. Now, I think this is hyper. My reason being, the part this connects to is the rotor down here, but I believe this is kept as a large grid, I mean a small grid rotor head. We've seen that with the advanced rotors before. And that there's a small grid blocks on top of the rotor, so it would seem that that's still a small grid. However, we can't do an interior turret, and these collision boxes would not line up. So I'm thinking that's a hypergrid. Now, the builder did comment on the inspiration episode and did mention that the turret was pasted from another ship. So this is probably an already established blueprint, and I'm guessing it was done with hypergrid tomfoolery type of thing. And don't feel too bad about tearing the ship apart, because A, that's why we're here, and B, I have a backup over there, just in case I had to do something like that. So yeah, I do like this. I really like the look. Unfortunately, that's not, I don't think, anything you can actually do with standard stuff. That does require a little bit of finagling. I really do have to commend the use of the blast door blocks for the edge stuff, just in terms of decorative, as well as the half slope and half blocks. There's half blocks all over this build, like right in here. Really, really well done. I really do like that. Now, I'm sure the turret and the side turrets are controlled through scripts, but I do like that as well. That's really cool. I like that when you move the main barrel, the side turrets move, because then when you're driving the tank, you can kind of just point wherever this is pointing, or that crosshair rather, and everything kind of goes in that general vicinity. I do like the use of the tires here. I've seen this done before, where the tires are kind of used to make it look similar to a barrel kind of thing. And how they're using the half blocks and half slopes along the top and bottom of the barrel, and then just every now and again using the 2x1 ramp tips to kind of make little nodule type things that are kind of off to the side to give it a little bit more depth. Now, one thing I have to check. Okay, so this is a triple rocket launcher thing. Now, I'm not really sure how this works. This doesn't appear to be anything where you would need to do hypergridding or anything, but I don't quite get how you can have a block there without the rocket launchers firing into it. That may just be a game thing, like it just doesn't detect it until it's out here or something. I don't know. That may not be any kind of iffy type situation or not. But it is kind of cool. It's a neat effect because it allows for a more closed barrel look, but you can still fire 3 at a time. Now, the one thing I'm personally not a fan of is that this works really well in creative, but in survival, I believe these rocket launchers are still manually loaded, which would mean you'd have to come out and load them through the barrels. So I'm not a big fan of that. I probably would have wanted to see like a reloadable rocket launcher or something with a conveyor system through the barrel, maybe. But that does save you from having to do that, in that because there's no need for a conveyor, you can have a more I guess authentic, if you want to put it that way, barrel type size. It doesn't have to be, you know, disproportionate or anything like that. Let's see, what else we got? I'm not sure what that is. Looks like blue half blocks. Probably, I'm guessing, to simulate the view from the cockpit, I would imagine, because I think the cockpit's back here somewhere. There it is. So I'm guessing that's supposed to be, oh, those aren't half blocks actually, those are full blocks, covered up by half blocks. But I'm guessing that's supposed to be kind of the view, so to speak. Now, one thing I'm confused about too is they've got this projection here, but I don't see a projector anywhere, and I can't figure out if it's in the barrel or not. So I'll probably do a little bit more dissecting here, because you can do offsets and things like that, but it has to be connected to... Oh, I did something. I broke something. Promise it wasn't intentional. Well, I mean, it kind of was, but... There we go. I think there was a gyroscope or something that was detached. I also just noticed there's these same thing on the sides. So I'm still sticking with, I think that's supposed to simulate the view of the pilot or the driver. I'm not 100% sure on that though. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. But as for this projector, I'd really like to figure out where it's sitting or where it's located. I'm kind of not thinking it's in the barrel. It might be back in here somewhere, but that's a really far offset. I didn't think you could offset them that far. Okay, that looks like a gyroscope. So I think we're getting closer. I really don't know where they hid this projector. Whoop! Runaway tire. Yeah, no, I really don't know where this projector is coming from. If it's further back in here, I really didn't know you could have a projector that offset that much. That's a rotor. That's what makes the turret move. Alright, I'm going to pause it and see if I can't find this thing. Alright, I finally found it. It's over here, actually, so that is really far. I did not know you could put a projector that far out on an offset, but there you go. And for those of you that aren't aware, I'm sure a lot of you already are, but I believe this is done by just making a blueprint out of an incomplete LCD panel window, something like that, that produces this kind of look. And then you just take that blueprint of that one block and put it in the projector. That's my understanding of how this would work, and that's how people can do the plus symbols and all that kind of stuff, is they just make really simple blueprints that are then used just for a crosshair kind of thing. I had to kind of do a lot of damage here, apparently. One thing I also need to point out that I just am now realizing is how well these half blocks connect to blast door edges. And what I mean by that is that that's the typical blast door block edge, that there's a bevel on both sides and that the middle of the block tends to be where the peak is. But putting a half block there, it really ends up just looking like a slope that ends when it gets to the block, which you can see really well here, and it's where I noticed it, was that these weren't just smaller edge blocks or something like that. There's actually, it's the half blocks next to them that make them look like just a bevel type of thing. So that's a really, really cool trick. I really do like that a lot. I also like the way they did the wheel frame. Again, nothing that we haven't actually seen before, with the 2x1 ramp bases back to back and the half blocks in between and stuff like that. But the spacing and everything works really well, and then they've got another different angle one on the inside here to give it a little bit more of a ridge, and that's really cool. I really like that. Again, though, I'm not 100% sure that this is done without some kind of hyper gridding because of the way that the blocks are clipping into the base of the wheels. It makes me suspicious that it could very well be the difference between the small ones and stuff. Actually, not even sure. The wheel is a 5x5. Wheel suspend. Okay, so they are still considered small blocks. The size of them had me wondering if they were actually large grid wheels or not, but those are actually small. Also, there was a bit of a fiasco in my inspiration episode where I could not get this door to open. As it turns out, even though they both read rear door, one is to lock it and one is to reverse it, and I did not know that, and I was just pushing buttons willy-nilly like that, which probably locked it, so I unlocked it. Or is it locked by default? It must be locked by default. So, yeah, there's... Wait, which one locks it? See, I'm doing the same thing. Okay, this reverses it, and then this locks and unlocks it. There you go. Problem solved. So it wasn't a mistake on the builder's part. It was just me not being able to figure out why there would be two buttons there. In my defense, they both say rear button, but everyone else in the comments seemed to figure that out way before I did, so I wanted to point that out. I also like this part back here, again using the text panels, so you kind of see the resemblance to the crosshair. It kind of has this cargo feel to it, where you could just like throw stuff in if you didn't want to, like the back of a pickup kind of look, where if you didn't want to actually get into the containers and stuff, you just toss stuff in the back here. So that's a pretty cool way of doing that with the wraparound text panels, the corner LED or LCD lights, corner lights. I guess that's not LCDs. Anyways. And then we've got the cargo containers connected with the half blocks, and then the half slopes and half blocks on top, and then it climbs up to the rest of the edge blocks, and so on and so forth, which is pretty cool. I'm not sure if this back here serves any purpose other than decoration, but it does look really cool. I do like how the blast door blocks connect together, as well as their more square grid-like form, where the standard blocks, the more you put together, they just kind of blend their textures together. I've always liked how the blast door blocks create more of a grid. And then we've got the air vents down here, which I'm assuming are just to look like exhaust vents or something. I doubt they really do much of anything per se. And I'm not sure what this is back here or what it's for other than decorative. It could be for role-playing purposes, where you could say that's where the shell comes out from, I guess. I'm not really sure what that's for. It looks cool. And again, it's just using the half slopes and half blocks to kind of wrap around a wheel, which is cool. Let's see. I do like these turrets, too. So they're just basically a rotor head with a blast door, corner inverted. That seems like a weird block choice. There's a decoy on the back, which I could see serving a purpose as far as if you were under attack, you could turn them on and then it would target your chain guns instead of the main turret, which is probably a good idea. I also like this little shell they gave it, which is a mixture of 2x1 ramps, corner tips, and half blocks and half slopes, it looks like. And when they're straight, like this is at a little bit of an angle, but if it were straight, it matches the shape over here, which makes it have a little bit more, almost feel like the weapon pod could extend, which is kind of cool. This inner edge kind of breaks that a little bit, but it looks cooler. And obviously it doesn't really retract or anything, so there's that, but yeah. I like this little half block slope in between these two corner bases. Just gives it a little bit more texture and depth kind of thing. Much like the rest of this stuff, these incomplete lights and piston head. I wasn't sure what that was. You know, stuff like that. Just adds to the detail. I do like this too. At first I didn't realize that it was actually like for anything. Come on. Come on. But this would actually be kind of useful. You can look out before you drop the door, or you could even shoot out of it if you were really pinned down or something like that. So that's kind of a neat little effect, which isn't super complicated. The door is basically just built out of the blast door edges, and then you've got the 2x1 corners back to back with one on the bottom side is the tip of the 2x1 ramps, and then there's a half slope in the middle one, so that's kind of cool. And I assume, yeah, there's a rotor right there to swivel the doors out. I do like the front bumper section too, or at least whatever the tank equivalent of a bumper is. I'm not really sure. Again, mixing the blast doors with half block. There's a lot of half block and ramps going on in this build. It's really cool, actually. Like this, we go from a base to a half slope to, or I mean a half block to a half slope kind of thing, which works really well for giving it this kind of arch shape. And then you got the blast doors in the front that connects into the rest of it, kind of giving it a bit more of a sturdier look to it, like it's got some kind of ramming cage or something on the front. Got lights on the bottom, that's a nice little touch. So yeah, I really like that. And then we've got the incomplete vents, which kind of look like a grill kind of thing for like a regular vehicle type of thing. So that's pretty cool. Let's see, what else? Is there anything else that we wanted to point out? This is a cool little contraption too. Again, it's a little cargo container with the 2x1 corner tips and a half slope in the middle. Leaves it still accessible, but kind of concealed. You could probably get away with putting a light on the top of that too if you wanted to make a little light fixture out of that in a base type design. Let's see. I didn't really touch too much on this turret mechanic up here, so I probably should do that. I do think there's... I feel like there's some hypergrid stuff going on here, because we've got the wheels, which are reading as small. They look a little bit big, but I don't know. There's usually not too many blocks you can get away with this collision clipping going on, so I'm feeling like some of this is done through some hypergrid magic kind of thing. Let's go over to the backup build over here, and let's take a better look at this turret, shall we? Since this one's actually intact. Oh, I had my lights on already. Okay. So I'm gonna probably borrow the spectator camera so that we can get a more unencumbered look at this, because this is some pretty tight quarters to really get a good look at how this is done. So we've got, it starts with the rotor. I mean, that's kind of fairly self-explanatory. It's a turret, so it's gonna have to be able to move. Let's see, we've got half blocks and half slopes. Now, as for the center, I'm not really sure because we're in the middle of it, so I can't really see it. I'm guessing it's either a standard block or a blast door block. Then we've got the 2x1 ramps coming out. Kind of making the... Oh, okay, I see. I was wondering where the grid transitioned. I was like, this is... Okay, how does this go into that? But it's because this whole top part is part of that. So that's really cool. This probably took a while to actually build this part. I mean, I'm sure the tank in and of itself took a while, but this part probably took a long time. Now, this is interesting to me. I've just kind of recently been told about the idea of disabling subgrid damage, and it's possible that this was built with that in mind. Otherwise, I'm really impressed with the spacing here, because this is really close. So if this can move and turn without damaging anything, and they don't have the not damaging subgrid part off, I'm not really sure how that was done, because that's really snug. But it seems to move without an issue. So if that's not the solution, then that's some really good spacing. And I mean, they're basically just standard blocks, so there's nothing real fancy about it. It's just probably trial and error, to be honest, until you figure out what works. Now, as for the rest of the actual turret, basically anything that's connected to this top part then is just all attached to this grid. But the turret part is in here. So the rest of this is all one, and then we found the rotor before, so this is the rotor for the actual turret. And again, it's spaced enough that I guess it wouldn't matter if the subgrid damage is on or not, because that'll probably move okay. And I don't know how this was built this close, because usually it won't let you place with if it's colliding with something, but once it's built, I could actually see this moving without much of an issue. Ooh, that one's a little close. Yeah, I'm wondering if the sub damage is off, because that seems really, really close. But it's still really, really well done, too. Oh, there's another rotor over here. Okay, so there's two. That one I've never quite figured out how you do. I've seen it done once or twice, where you have a grid between two rotors, but I've never quite figured out how you do that, to be honest. Mainly because of the rotor displacement being different. Well, assuming it's different. But anyways, that's another topic. So we have a gyroscope here. We have the projector for the crosshair. We've seen that. Then we have another gyroscope on each side. And I think that mostly makes up the turret. The rest of this is pretty much decoration. That we've seen when I was taking it apart and everything. We have a camera for monitoring it. So yeah, I'm impressed with this. This is a really well-made tank kind of thing. Like, as far as it doesn't have... It really looks like a legitimate tank. It's not like some of them where it's like you're trying to, but it doesn't quite drop into that realm of believability kind of thing. This one's... Yeah, no, it looks like a really good tank. There's a mixture of blast door and standard block. Oh, what is this? Where did I end up? Okay, so this is under this interior turret that we found earlier. Okay. The beacon's back here, and the antenna's back here. I've seen that. Or no. Beacon's down here in the base. There it is. So that's the beacon. The antenna's up here. We just passed it somewhere. It's hard to see in all this block. But why is the spotlight here? That's what I can't quite figure out. There's a spotlight on the rotor, and it's under the interior turret. It's kind of like in the middle of everything over here, so I can't figure out what that's for. This is the antenna. So that's interesting. Again, the turret design was taken from a different build, so maybe some of those mechanics were still implemented in the blueprint. I'm not really sure. But anywho, I think we're going to wrap up this episode here. So I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think about the build and some of the points. As I said, if you guys have any ideas for future episodes or some different styles or things like that, feel free to let me know. I won't guarantee that I'll do them, but, you know, I'm all ears. So with that, we're going to wrap things up here. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.